October 28th, 1962. This is the final day of the Cuban Missile Crisis. President Kennedy and Soviet Premier Khrushchev have agreed to withdraw medium-range missiles from Turkey and Cuba, respectively, and begin to walk back from the brink of a nuclear holocaust. U.S. strategic forces are moved to DEFCON 3, and the world breathes a collective sigh of relief. This is the final segment in our revisit of the Cuban Missile Crisis and our fundraising attempt. More about that in a moment. So, if the DEFCON warning system had been in existence in 1962, how would our alert levels have compared to the U.S. military's? Well, if we only had access to the technology of that time, we would have most likely been lower than the military level at the beginning of the crisis due to the lack of modern open source intelligence techniques. We might have become aware of unusual U.S. naval activity and bumped our level to DEFCON 4 while the U.S. military was at DEFCON 3. However, we would most likely not have become aware of how serious the situation really was until the rest of America did when Kennedy addressed the nation on live television. At that point, we would have immediately moved to DEFCON 2. So how do our levels compare with the U.S. militaries here in the 21st century? Honestly, we really don't go out of our way to try to find that out. Sometimes we know, sometimes we don't. But it is important to know that our goal is not to attempt to guess the U.S. military's DEFCON level. It's not our job. Our mission is to assess global nuclear threats based on our own observations and analysis and issue an alert to the general public based on that analysis. Also, we will never indicate to anyone what the U.S. military DEFCON level really is, even if we do happen to be aware of it. That level is classified information, and to reveal that information would constitute a felony, as well as potentially compromise our national security. Which brings me to something we see a lot of on social media, and that is comments like, "We're really at DEFCON 3," or "You guys should be at DEFCON 2, not DEFCON 5. Well, there are two important concepts to know here. Number one, if someone is claiming to know the real DEFCON level of the U.S. military, they are either committing a crime by sharing that information, or they are lying. And we usually lean towards the latter. So please take any comments you might see like that with a grain of salt. Again, our level has absolutely zero to do with whatever level the U.S. military might be. The second, DEFCON levels are not intended to be held for indefinite lengths of time. They are issued for imminent nuclear threats, not general threats that may or may not materialize 6 months from now. Holding an elevated DEFCON level for an extended period of time leads to a phenomenon known as alert fatigue, which affects the staff at the DEFCON warning system as well as anyone monitoring our levels. Now, just because we're at DEFCON 5 doesn't mean we think everything is rainbows, unicorns, and butterflies. It means we don't see any indications of an imminent nuclear threat. Remember, DEFCON 5 is a good thing. Only sick, emotionally disturbed individuals actively wish for it to go higher. Well, this isn't a movie, folks. It's reality. So, as we were telling people throughout this series, the DEFCON warning system was attempting to switch its revenue stream from web-based advertising to donations from our followers. What we were hoping to do was eliminate the ads from our website and increase the reliability and speed of our website during crisis situations. We were also hoping we could improve our desktop and Android notification apps. We did not raise enough funds to switch our revenue stream. To those of you who did contribute, we are so very grateful. And we want you to know that while we did not accomplish our goal, we will be using the funds you donated to improve our web server so we have fewer problems with it during crisis situations. I've submitted a copy of our website to a friend of mine who works in cyber defense for our local Department of Homeland Security, and we hope to have some suggestions from him for improvements soon. We deeply, deeply appreciate your support. Thank you.
I like Eric's shirt. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for tuning into our series on the Cuban Missile Crisis. For most of us, and I can include myself in that us, the Cuban Missile Crisis is not just history, but it's ancient history. And so we may think of it as something that could never happen again. And while it's true that Russia would never place missiles in Cuba again, because, even the most incompetent U.S. president would have to respond to that. So we're never going to see that particular incident happen again. That doesn't mean that some crisis like this can't happen. And what's important to take from this is how quickly this incident built up. It was only a matter of 13 days from the time that the United States started taking action over the missiles in Cuba to how close we came to nuclear war. And even that wasn't 13 days. That was 12 days or 11 days or 10 days. And the time that the American public was aware that something was going on, that's even less time. That's like 2 days between the time that they learned of a crisis and the time that nuclear missiles could have been flying. 1 day, less time than that. Maybe no time at all if something had gone wrong between the ships out there, between the United States and Russia. What happens if they did depth charge and destroy a submarine? What would happen if that Russian submarine did launch a nuclear strike? What would happen if Castro got his way and convinced Russia to launch a preemptive strike? What would happen if Castro actually had the ability to do that himself? Fortunately, none of that happened. But as you can see, it's possible to get very little notice that something like this is happening. Now, with today's technology, we can see military movements, but a lot of times we can't see diplomatic movements. And what's happening in war rooms or what's happening between countries behind closed doors, we don't know unless somebody in there comes out and, leaks information. We can tell, tensions between countries. There's tension between Russia and the United States. There's tension between China and the United States, China and Taiwan. There's all sorts of tensions that we can see. But when does that tension spill over into possible war? That's where the DEFCON warning system comes in. We spend a lot of time advising people to prepare for disaster. A lot of our detractors say that we do that because, we're warmongers. We're all rooting for World War III. Nothing be further from the truth. Most of the DEFCON staff would be killed in a nuclear war. What we're trying to do is we're trying to prepare you, or we're trying to get you to prepare for disaster. We all know about hurricanes. We all know about tornadoes. We all know about earthquakes. We all know about wildfires. But these disasters are local. And when a disaster hits, we can count on the government to come in and help us. And this goes for, and that was a very US-centric way for me to look at things, but that goes true for other countries as well. United Kingdom, Russia, China, all these other countries, all countries have governments that can respond to local disasters. Nuclear war is not a local disaster, it's a national disaster, and you will not have the government available to help you. They tell you that within 2 weeks, you should have supplies for 2 weeks, because by then the government should have a structure in place to be able to start distributing food and assistance. That's not going to happen. Expect to be on your own for weeks at a time, months at a time. I believe the Mormons have a philosophy that they should store up supplies for 2 years. Most survivalists believe you should supply yourself for 2 years. I know that's an awful lot for a lot of people, but anything is better than nothing. If you can survive on your own for a month, you're doing better than the person who can survive on his own for 2 weeks. If you can just survive on your own for 3 months, you're doing better than the person who survived on his own for 1 month. The longer you can survive by yourself without help from the outside, the better you are doing. Remember, when disaster hits and you're on your own, you don't want your family looking at you asking why you didn't prepare. So this is part of the DEFCON warning system's mission, to convince you to prepare for disaster and to warn you in the event that disaster is coming. For those of you who supported us during our campaign here, thank you for your support. I know money is very tight. I know that this money could be used for something else, and we thank you for your donations. This is going to enable us to do our job better. We thank you for your support. We thank you that you believe in our mission, which is to warn the public in the event of possible nuclear war, because this is something that the government is just not going to do. We saw that again in the Cuban Missile Crisis. Look how long it took them to say something. That is probably what's going to happen again in the event of nuclear war. They're going to wait to the last minute if they say anything at all. So we are the watchmen on the wall, and we are going to do our best to give out an alert in the event that something goes wrong. And our scale, as you can see, goes up and down depending on the crisis situations. You never know what's going to happen. Things get worse, things get better. We've stepped to the brink of nuclear war several times, and we've come back, thankfully, each and every time. Who knows, one day we just may cross over into that abyss. Our job is to warn how close we are getting to that abyss. And for those of you who support us, thank you. For those of you who do support us, but you couldn't support us monetarily, thank you as well. Please leave a comment, like us, subscribe to us, come to our community forum. We love interacting with the public. We like hearing what you have to say. Feel free to ask us questions, talk to us. That's where we interact the most. And we love hearing from you. Thank you again. Everyone supported us. I'm Tom Lonelywolf, the director of the DEFCON warning system.
On behalf of everyone here at the DEFCON warning system, we hope you enjoyed this little trip down memory lane, and thank you so very much for watching.